My question was, how did we miss the bus with the citizenship, the national-born citizenship problem? Do we use the same route that you just discussed? Weren't you on a case, Doctor?
I'm still on a case, yes. I'm sort of been involved in. And by the way, I usually don't talk about my personal experience in the context of all these things because I think those are not the issues for the people. But the truth is that the response that has been out there, it's changing now, obviously, especially given what Donald Trump has been doing. But the response to the issue itself and to those who are articulating it, by the way, in a very reasonable way, the lies that they told in the media and so forth, that's the first thing that folks should be focusing on about this question. Why wasn't this an issue that was brought before the people before they voted in 2008? John McCain had to be subjected to scrutiny on the basis of questions about his satisfaction of that requirement. It is so ironic that you have a person who actually voted on the resolution that was the result of the deliberations about John McCain's status, and yet that person is not himself subject to the same scrutiny as John McCain. How did this happen? And it then leads first to ignoring two facts. First, the first thing you do when you're trying to decide a factual question is you examine the evidence. Yeah? Examining the evidence means that just because someone trots out something and says this is evidence, that doesn't mean you say, oh yeah, fine, and go forward. No, you examine it. You look at it. And you say, oh, wait a minute. You know, this is not what it's supposed to be. This doesn't have the facts we need. This doesn't look like it corresponds to the authentic document and so forth. That's what examination is about. Now, folks who looked at that certificate of live birth, I think it was called, or certification of live birth, that was posted on the internet. This is laughable, y'all. Here we have the most important and powerful office in the gift of the American people, and we are dealing with the question of constitutional qualifications in a way that wouldn't be acceptable if you were hiring a janitor to take care of your building. Okay? The janitor comes in and he says that, well, I worked here and here and here. You're going to pick up the phone, and if they don't have no idea who he is, well, or if nobody answers on the other end, you're going to go on and say, well, that didn't wash. Or if he has a letter, you're going to look at it and say, well, you know, that looks awfully like the signature you just signed with. Maybe you made up this letter, and so forth, right? You're going to take a look. You're not going to just say, oh, fine, you got your letter, and throw it out without looking at it. So we didn't examine the evidence. We didn't get a chance to examine the evidence. And that was a fault, by the way, of not just the media, it was media, but also of our political leaders, who at every stage, whether as secretaries of state in the different states, or as members of the Congress at certain stages in the process, they have an obligation to follow the Constitution, do what it requires, ascertain what it requires, and they didn't. Let's be clear about this. Dereliction of duty. And it was a dereliction of duty on the part of the whole elite class in America. Every element of the responsible public, media, and political elite, including the judiciary, abdicated on this question. And we're just sitting here acting like, oh, that doesn't matter, we shouldn't be upset with them. Excuse me? You really think that when your elite starts studiously dropping the ball on a question of constitutional integrity, it doesn't affect you? You don't realize, do you, that in the back of their minds thinking, well, if we get away with this, what will we get away with that? See? If they're not looking when we disregard the Constitution on this one, they won't bother later. And they won't realize until the stormtroopers show up at their house what the implications are. And so then it becomes dereliction on our part because we're not paying attention. We're not demanding evidence. Second point, finally. People think that this birth certificate thing is what it's all about. I'm sorry. There's another serious issue of constitutional integrity that has to be addressed. Barack Obama is a child of one citizen parent, okay, and one non-citizen parent. Now, I'm not going to go into how we decide this issue. There are arguments, in my opinion, to be made on both sides, fairly strong ones. But it is a legitimate question that must be resolved authoritatively whether or not the natural-born citizen requirement points to and requires two citizen parents? That's a question that has to be answered, because in the tradition of law that the founders operated in, and that has a bearing on the meaning of the words natural-born citizen, there is a line of thinking that says that 2 parents are required. Okay? And was that the line of thinking? There's evidence for and against the notion that that was also the thinking of the founders, verified by later historical process and the debates over the 14th Amendment and so forth and so on. So all this stuff is out there. It is usually the job of judges, who are supposed to be the ones who we first go to and say, well, there's a dispute about what the Constitution means. Could you help us out? The reason they exist is to, okay, in this case, we all apply and they go through the history and they present you with their opinion, which is supposed to be an informed and expert opinion, right, about the Constitution. Has that happened in this case? No. Every time somebody goes, they actually, by the way, have had the nerve to suggest to me and to others, one of the reasons I got involved is because people were looking for a way to deal with the standing issue. Judges were saying that citizens coming and saying, is the Constitution being respected, don't have standing to ask that question. The first words of the Constitution, I believe, are, we the people. The people are speaking, and yet members of the sovereign body of the people don't have standing when they ask whether their words are being followed. Hello? Wake up. See? That means that the elite class, once it occupies positions of power, can shut the people out, ignore the Constitution, trample on rights, trample on procedures, and we can't even call them to account in our courts. For whom do the courts exist, if not for justice for all the people? And if the people can't get justice as citizens, why should they expect they'll get justice as persons? So I'll tell you, this is a vitally important question. And we should demand that they do their jobs, that they follow their oaths. And we should begin to realize that every single official, I don't care what their party is, I don't care what their position is, every single official that has had a role in this and that has in dereliction abdicated their responsibility to demand that the Constitution be satisfied. In my considered opinion, if we have the wherewithal, we ought to kick them all out. Because they have fallen short of their conscientious oath, and they have let the Constitution fall into